Someone's going to go for 2 and get it at some point.
It's 1:42 in the morning.
Yeah, that's all right. Number 1. Shocker. Ironton.
Man, give me the Trojans.
There we go.
Welcome into Overtime, presented by Perfection One. Along with John Bruce, my name is Dewey Dailey, as we welcome you into this week's show, episode 62, I think, here on the podcast. A lot of good basketball last week. We finally broke our streak of not the most competitive games that we were at. We did 3 broadcasts. We were only at 2 of them, but really all 3 games were very competitive. So I think maybe we're back on track and really right at the right time, as we're about a week away from starting the girls tournament. And then obviously the boys tournament still a couple weeks away. So things are starting to heat up. And the girls bracket was released last night, I believe.
Yeah, Sunday about 3:30.
And I think next week we're going to do the March Madness type bracket pick'em thing. So we'll do that next week, and then the boys one after that. But we've got some games we're going to recap from last week, some games to preview this week, because obviously it's the last week before the tournament draw. So it's kind of the last games that, outside of like conference play, the last games that like technically matter for the draw.
Yeah, and it kind of drives me nuts because it's all computerized at this point. So why don't Saturday's games matter? But whatever. I guess it's technically better than what we had before, where coaches are calling each other on the way there and kind of backdooring each other to try to get the best seed possible. I still wish it would be like, the rest of the state does it and you get your seed and then you pick where you go on the bracket, but making slight adjustments. Next, it will be where all 9 district championship games that we're going to have won't be played at the exact same time on the same date. That's the next change. We're getting some evolution here, but yeah, we'll do the March Madness stuff that we did last year. We're going to do that starting next week with the girls, the week after with the boys, because really you can't, with the way some of the buys are, you can't really preview some of the games. So instead of game previews next week, we'll do that. While we'll still recap some games and talk about some big performances and whatnot. So, start us off. We had some big ones this week.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and jump into the weekly headlines. We have 3 1,000-point scores. We're going to go over 2 girls basketball players and then 1 boys basketball player to round out the headlines. So we'll start with a sophomore out of Greene, Abbie Knapp, already with her 1,000th career point. Averaging over 27 points per game. We talked about her a couple of weeks ago as a pretty obvious 2,000-point candidate, and you're kind of seeing why. Is already 1,000 points as a sophomore, and I'd say probably, I'm not sure what their record is, but at least 7 or 8 more games to go, including tournament play. So a lot of season left this year for her, obviously. And Greene, in terms of a team, a lot better this year than they were last year. We talked about Knapp and I think Hayslip a little bit last year, but this year Greene's really gotten over the hump, and I think they're Division 6 or 7. They're Division 7, so obviously their eyes. Still a big rematch tonight with Notre Dame, so we're obviously not going to get to talk about that until potentially next week, just due to kind of how our scheduling works with the games. But still, obviously, for them, a lot to play for in the postseason as well.
Yeah, they're 16-1 right now, so that's at least 5 more regular season games. They got the 2 seed, so I think they've got a nice little run to possibly win a district until you run into Waterford, but at the same time, 16-1. You're 16-1 for a reason, which means you can really play. As you mentioned, 27 points a game, 27.1. I would say she'll probably be around 1,200 after this season, if not more. And Maddie Hayslip looks like she's on pace to get towards 1,000 as well. She averages 14.1 as a sophomore. But as you mentioned, they're a lot more balanced throughout their team. They have more than just those 2 options, and that's what's made them off to this 16-1 start. And big one on Monday, which, as you mentioned, we won't be talking about on this show because, this show comes out on Tuesday. So I think Brock's going to be there, so look for a story and whatnot in retrospect. So whenever you watch this. So, that's a big accomplishment. We watched her last year. We were both impressed with what she was able to do. But the fact the team has made the jump this year, I think, has been the most impressive thing, because that was kind of what we walked away from that game thinking last year was like, man, if she gets some help, that she's going to be really good. But yeah, it's looks like a team that's definitely on the rise.
And then another 1,000-point score on the girls basketball side of things for Fairland, Kamryn Barnitz. We'll actually see her Monday night. So tonight for us is they've got a big one with Portsmouth that we're going to live stream as one of our 2 broadcasts this week. But for Barnitz, over 14 points per game this season for them. I believe they're the number 2 seed in Division 5. Yes. So I think they're still a favorite to win one of the 3 district titles in the Southeast District. But for Barnitz, I believe now the 2nd player on this Fairland team to reach the 1,000-point mark. So definitely another big accomplishment for her.
Yeah, she runs, as a senior, she has gotten to that mark along with Bailey Russell, only a junior, as teammates over the 1,000-point mark for Fairland. She's also hit 190 career threes, which, if you average close to 53s a year, that's going to help you get to that 1,000-point mark. But yeah, she's been very impressive, especially this year. She's kind of expanded her game a little bit. She hit a big shot last year at the Final Four that nearly forced overtime for them. Just a really good all-around player. We've seen her since she was a sophomore. Actually, we saw her when she was a freshman, didn't we? Down at at Waverly at the downtown gym, where she's just gotten a little bit better each year, and that's why she's going to go play college basketball down in Florida. So she's, not done yet. But for Fairland, as you mentioned, they're the 2 seed. They picked to go to the Southwest. And when I just looked at who they would run into in a regional semi, I like their chances to get to at least a regional final. And then once you're there, you just kind of never know. But I would say they're a heavy favorite to get at least to a regional final once again, and likely to the Final Four for the 3rd straight year.
And then one other 1,000-point score for us this past week for Eastern, Tucker Leist. What a week he had. The last couple of weeks, a lot of big performances for him, which I think got him to 1,000 points, maybe a game or 2 quicker than maybe he imagined. But nonetheless, for Tucker Leist, his 1,000th career point. As it stands, Eastern, the number 1 team in Division 6. Them and North Adams have been kind of flipping back and forth between the 1 and 2 seeds. As it stands, it kind of looks like Eastern might hold on to it if they're able to win out. But yeah, for Leist, obviously a big accomplishment for him as a senior, and kind of similar to what you said about Barnitz. Eastern not done yet. No,
they've had a really good year. I don't know if we expected. I think we expected them to be decent, but
I picked Western to win the league. Eastern graduated a pretty solid amount, pretty good chunk of players from last season. So I figured with Eastern being coached as well as they are, like they would be good, but. To be and really like the loss to Northwest is still a head scratcher,
right?
Because they've dominated. Other than that, they had the 2 close games with Western, but they dominated Sims Valley in that one game. I don't know if they've played South Gallia twice, but that's who they beat when he got 1,000 points. So they beat him at least once. I'm not sure.
They play Sims this week.
And I think they beat Oak Hill already at least once. So they've dominated in league play. And what are they, 16-2 or 15-2? They had the loss to South Webster and then that loss to Northwest. So you lose to the number 1 team in Division 7. And then I think maybe you just stub your toe a little bit with Northwest. So, it's been a team that's, for the most part, been lights out this season.
Yeah, they've been really good. They're fun to watch. And as you mentioned, really well coached. I think Declan Davis is been a piece that they really needed to add some toughness, a secondary scorer for them as well. Aiden Warner does some good things for them as well. And then Cade Leist has really came along, which we'll talk about a little bit here in a few minutes. But Tucker Leist had the 8 for 10 game from 3-point range against Sims Valley that we had a little over a week ago. It's, in the archives here. He had 30 points and I think scored 2 in the second half. Didn't really have to. So it was really impressive. And then we'll talk about what he did against Western here in just a minute as well. But man, he's been really good. And one of the things about him is it seems like he never gets tired. Like he's just always moving. There was a play, I don't know if he turned it over or someone else did, but it seemed like there was no way he's getting back. And he easily deflected the ball away and nearly saved it on a run out for Western in that game on Tuesday. So Tucker Leist has been outstanding, as has Knapp and Barnitz. So congratulations to all 3 for getting to the 1,000-point mark this week. And look forward to following all of them as they continue to add on throughout this year and for Knapp beyond this year as well.
And then we'll just go ahead and jump into the boys basketball segment. So we've got a handful of games that we're going to quickly recap. And then we're going to go over our team of the week on the boys' side, and then we'll preview a couple of games, do our quick picks, and then move over to the girls' segment. So we'll start off talking about one of the players we just got done talking about, Tucker Leist and the Eastern Eagles. A big win over in Latham on Military Appreciation Night this past Tuesday. A 57-56 win for the Eagles. We were just talking about Tucker Leist. I think he was 14 points shy after the Western game. He obviously got that on, I think, Friday is when they played South Gallia. But I'm not sure what his total point his point total was for the night, but had a big three in the final few seconds against Western as they trailed by 2 after, I think it was Jane split a pair on the other end. So for Tucker Leist, I mean, we've seen him twice this year, and you just look to that game against Sims Valley and the game against Western. I mean, that's about you can't. And then he gets his 1,000-point the game after, and then they beat New Hope. So just for as long as we've been paying attention, just an incredible 4-game stretch for Eastern.
Yeah, he's been outstanding for them. And like I mentioned, there's other players that have stepped up as well. Boston Webb is another one. He hit a couple big shots in this game, but he was a part of a really big defensive stop late. So in this game, it's kind of back and forth throughout. I think Western went up 8 early, and then Eastern, I think, eventually led by 6 in the 4th. Western is able to chip away, make some big shots. Cam Janes, Drew Hagee, really Janes that night, Landon Owens as well.
Yeah.
I thought they did a good job. Foster Davis hit a big 3 for him as well. So I thought Western did a really good job in this game, but where they were switching on that last possession, you could tell Tucker Leist kind of read that. It was a deep 3. It was very, he got steps forward a little bit on his shot, so it wasn't fully behind the volleyball line, but it was, I would say it was NBA range and just absolutely nothing but net with about 20 seconds left. Once again, you can check it out in our archives. Yeah. It was a really good game, and Western walks it up, calls timeout with about 14 seconds left. They try to run some backdoor action to get to Hagee, and Boston Webb did a great job in help side defense because Wyatt Richardson was guarding Hagee in the corner and did a good job on him. But Boston Webb completely cut off where that backdoor was going to go. Janes had to kind of throw the ball back out. They eventually call another timeout with 1.4 seconds left. On the inbounds, I believe it was either Webb or Warner deflected it away, and the other one grabbed it. It was one way or the other, but they just did a great job defensively there at the end of the game. Eastern's a team that can score a lot of points if the game kind of dictates that. But they also can play really good defense, and they did so in that one just when they needed it. Like Janes and Hagee are a really good duo and really hard to stop as a whole. So holding them to 56 points is a good thing, and then holding them without a shot in that last 20 seconds was huge. It was really impressive. Really, really good win for Eastern.
No, I mean, you mentioned Hagee and Janes for Western, but I think the main thing I took away for head coach Doug Williams is that I think Landon Owens is going to be a player for him over the next few years. I mean, he's one of those guys that, sometimes you can kind of tell when there's an underclassman on the floor, but I don't think you would have guessed Owens was a freshman.
Because he's got a good build too.
Mm-hmm. No, and I mean, he didn't hesitate to shoot. I mean, he a lot of the time, he's kind of the main ball handler up the floor for them. He doesn't take a lot of breaks. I mean, I think him, Janes and Hagee probably logged the most time on the floor. I mean, I think Sullivan and Foster Davis were the other 2 starters. So maybe Davis was on the floor because I'm not sure they really have a big guy behind Davis that sees a lot of minutes. I mean, you saw Satterfield check in the second half, but that was really the only time you got to look at him. So I think Western is number 3 in Division 7 right now. Yeah. So if you look at the rankings with only 2 district champions, technically not a favorite to win a district title. But I'm telling you, I think Western is going to be a team that kind of surprises a lot of people. And we'll talk about them here in a little bit, but they just keep losing by the slimmest margins. I mean, I'm not sure what their total record is, maybe like 8-6 or something like that. Yeah, 9-6. And of those 6 losses, I mean, just off the top of my head, 4 or 5 of those have to be by less than 8 points.
Lost in overtime to Valley. Lost by 11 to Wheelersburg, 2 to Eastern, 6 to Sims Valley, which is their second biggest loss, 1 to Eastern, and then 1 to North Adams. So, yeah, they're going to be battle tested.
I mean, they're like 15 points away from having like one loss.
Yeah.
I mean, they just, I think that it might have been a little bit of an understatement, but I mean, they just keep losing by the slimmest margins to where, and they get a lot of open looks. I mean, Cataneo and Owens both had, a fair share, and I think Hagee as well had a fair share of threes that didn't fall in. They scored 56 points, and I don't think it was their best shooting night. Now, obviously, they caught fire a little bit in the fourth quarter with Davis hitting a three, and James had that and one in the last 4 minutes of the fourth quarter. So I think for Western, maybe winning the league is they may have been already clinched out of even an opportunity. They may have already been eliminated from league contention. I'm not sure how the games
technically not yet, but pretty close.
So I think for them, with the seeding is coming out this week. I don't know what their schedule looks like, but
they're on the road.
Yeah, I was going to say we've talked about how pretty much every game in the SOC2 is going to be a tough one. So some big seeding games for them this week, especially if they want to avoid being on the same side. I'm not sure how close they are from dropping to number 3 to number 4, but you obviously don't want to. You really would probably rather play. I think Notre Dame is the number 2 than South Webster in the number 1 spot. So
they are probably a loss from dropping below Fairfield.
Yeah. And did Fairfield move up to 4 and Southern
4,
went back to 5 or whatever?
And Western right now, this week, they play at Paint Valley, at Oak Hill, and at South Gallia. I think those are all
3 wins.
Yeah, that's 3 games they can definitely win. And now going on the road makes that tougher, but we'll talk about
Paint Valley's been playing a little better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Oak Hill's pretty solid. I think Western beat them the first time around. Mm-hmm. I think they beat them by double digits. That was or I think they beat them by 9. It wasn't that this past Saturday?
Game, yes.
Yeah,
Friday, yeah.
Or Friday it was 49-40 or something like that. 59-50. Yeah.
So. But Paint Valley gives them, with Carson Free is going to make that kind of a difficult matchup because his size and his ability to go in and out. So that could be an interesting one to look for on Tuesday. But yeah, those are all winnable games for Western. And I don't know if they can jump Notre Dame if Notre Dame doesn't lose, because Notre Dame's got a pretty good advantage on them as far as overall points.
I think I like Western over Notre Dame if they were to match up. And the good thing about Western is we were talking about it a little bit on the girls' side on Saturday. I don't think Western is going to suffer from their opponent's record knocking them down a spot, because they've lost to really good teams and all by the slimmest of margins. So
they're just looking at it out of the top 10. Their opponent's win percentage is 3rd out of the top 10, and that's behind South Webster and then South Gallia, who they play South Gallia, so that bumps South Gallia's up, where South Gallia would drop Western's down a little bit just based off of their overall record. But yeah, they played good teams. They played good teams that beat good teams as well. So for Western, they won't drop too much, but they want to make sure that they win as much as possible going into this to at least have some more confidence, because it's got to be tough losing all those close games.
And then we'll go ahead and move on to our second game that we're going to recap, a big one in the OVC. Fairland, a 61-56 win, I believe, on the road at Ironton in double overtime to remain unbeaten in the OVC. I believe Fairland's only loss to?
Warren.
Did they lose to Warren? Yeah. Okay, I wasn't sure if because I knew Minford had the loss to Warren. So Warren has handed 2 of the top teams in Division 5 their only losses on the season. And
had to come back from being down 5 against Chillicothe at home.
Yeah.
Early in the season as well. So it seems like, and when I see that, it makes me think this Chillicothe team, even though they've dealt with some losses, are better than they are, or maybe better than the record shows, because Warren obviously is very good. They're going to be the 2 seed in Division 3 because, Miami Trace doesn't lose. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, Fairland has been outstanding. They've got the point guard that can kind of, be a difference maker down the stretch. He had 23 points in this game. Cliff Franson had 13. Go ahead and say it. The next one, because I always say it wrong.
For who?
Fairland.
Trevor Locko?
Yeah. Trevor Locko.
Did you forget how to say it?
Yeah. What did we say early?
Well, I said the clip of Markham hitting that 3, I said locale.
That's what I always say. So I always wanted to make sure I didn't say it wrong on this one. But yeah, that Locko had 11 in this one. There was a game, I'm trying to think who they were playing. It might have been Sims Valley, which would make sense.
Fairland?
Yeah, based off of Sims Valley giving up threes, where Laco hit 5 threes to start the game.
Yeah.
And it was like 5 straight possessions. So, I mean, man, he can really stretch the floor. Cliff Francis can stretch the floor. Keegan Smith, I like what he does for them. And then also Gabe Polson can do as well. They're not the deepest team as Fairland, but, man, that starting 5 is very good. And once again, you have that point guard that can really make a difference in the game. And I believe it did down the stretch for Fairland in that win at Ironton. Ironton dropped to 8-5 after that. I believe they're 10-5 now. Ashton Lane, 19 points, only a sophomore. He had 8 rebounds in the game. Braden Schreck, 15 points. Markel Cotton had 11. I liked what we saw out of Ironton.
Ironton's supporting cast, I think, is a little underrated.
Yeah.
Just from kind of, and I've only seen them once, and I mean, if we're going to be 100% honest, it wasn't against the most competitive opponent, as Portsmouth is a little bit down this year. And just
got really beat up in that game.
And just when we kind of started to think they were playing a little bit better, they beat a really underrated Chillicothe team over at Shawnee State. They just seem like they're like literally getting beat up and not that most, like they're not healthy.
They don't have a lot of depth.
But I think at the top of their rotation, obviously Braden Schreck, I think Ashton Lane has kind of established himself as one of the go-to guys. And I think Bryce Markins, he can chuck it. I mean, he can let it go from downtown. We didn't see him have his greatest night shooting, but I think he's like a 39 or 40% three-point shooter on the season. So he's obviously a dangerous threat as well. But, I mean, we saw Tyler Roach come off the bench and have a good game. You mentioned Markel Cotton. I'm missing somebody out of their starting lineup because Tyler Roach didn't start, and Markel Cotton was. I can't think of the other starter. Oh, it was what's their coach's last name?
Yeah, that's what I was.
I can't
Barnes.
think it. Yeah, Judah Barnes.
Yep.
Was in their rotation as well, and he does a good job kind of facilitating the basketball through their offense. So.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to have a point guard that can score, but it's also nice to have a point guard that doesn't have to get shots.
Well, I mean, you look around social media, and the idea of players kind of knowing their role has been a big thing over the last week or so, which I think he does a good job of. When we do our brackets next week, I think Ironton's kind of a dark horse to win a district title out of Division 5. Division 5 has kind of taken the spot. It's where most of the Division 3 teams have went. I mean, you've seen a couple move up to Division 4, or I guess move down. I don't know how to say it. And then obviously North Adams moved to Division 6, but most of the teams moved to Division 5. Division 5, I think, is the most competitive division, at least in the Southeast District.
Do you want me to? Okay, I'm going to do this.
From top to bottom, I would say.
The 13 is 10-7.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's,
last year, Zane Trace, who split a league championship, was like 10 or something. So, I mean.
So, right now, Minford's the 1, Fairland's the 2, Chesapeake's the 3, Ironton's the 4. Now, Ironton and Chesapeake play.
Oh, Ironton's 4 now?
Yeah. They play this week, and that could easily switch those two because Chesapeake's non-league schedule has not been very good. So their opponents
win percentage. They lost to Valley.
Yeah, they lost to Valley. This is a kind of prove-it time for Chesapeake, which we'll talk about. We're going to preview something here in a few minutes, but it's a huge week for Chesapeake. But Chesapeake, I mentioned it later on in our notes, but they finish with Ironton, Fairland, Ironton, Fairland. That's their last 4 regular season games. So they get a chance to prove how good they are coming up. Ironton's the 4. Zane Trace, who's 15-3, is the 5. Eastern Brown, who's very good, is the 6.
And they were kind of underrated going into last year's Division 3 tournament, and they fell a point. Was it a point shy to South Point? 2 points shy over at the Waverly Downtown Gymnasium last season. So
yeah, and we'll try to stay away if we can because
they can't. They lose by like
3 or 2,
1 to like 4 points every time we're around them.
Yeah, South Point, like the records drop a little bit with like Wheelersburg, South Point, Portsmouth, all under 500 in the 7 through 9 spots right now. But they're all quality teams. I mean, Portsmouth, as we mentioned, very beat up right now, not a lot of depth. But Oak Hill, Northwest, both over 500 are the 10 and 11. Colgrove, with one of the better players in our area, is the 12, and then Nelsonville 10-7. I mean, man, that's as you mentioned, the depth of Division 5. Think about like you're the 4 seed, and you're like, oh, we're playing the 13. The 13's 10-7. Like I know Nelsonville hasn't played the toughest schedule, But when you've played Megs twice,
yeah, it's 2 automatic losses.
You're pretty much set up to, like, you've played one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the district, regardless of division. So, you're going to be prepared for anybody you're going to see. So it's not going to be the easiest game there in that spot. So, as you mentioned, it's a big win for Fairland, especially seeding wise. It looks like Fairland's probably going to stay in that 2 spot. I don't think they can jump. I mean,
they're about 2 points behind.
Yeah, I would say it's too far behind.
I'm not sure Minford's going to lose. And if they do lose, it'll be to most likely Southwebster. I'm not sure that would drop them.
Or Miami Trace. And
I forgot they do play Miami
but
Trace.
Those are both after the draw. So,
and even if they weren't, I mean, those are 2 number 1. Yeah. Like, those are 2 number 1 seeded teams, I think, currently. And is Miami Trace number 1 in Division 3 or 4 or whatever? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. They're Division 3, right?
Yes.
Okay. They're because that's the district that technically may not have a district champion because
you got to play the East,
right? So
which is like Tri-Valley or
like the district championship in the Southeast in Division 3 is a district semifinal. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, and both boys and girls, which is something we'll talk about next week as well. So
all right,
I'll say it.
Well, I was going to say, speaking of Miami Trace,
yes. So we're on the road Saturday, and we're like pulling up different games just to try to like see what's going on. And Miami Trace and Jackson played at like 1:30 on Saturday, which is kind of a crazy time, but it seemed like they had a nice crowd
for a league.
Pretty much a league title game. And Jackson had a lead. Miami Trace defensively makes some plays, and then Miami Trace decided they didn't want to make free throws. Jackson was able to tie it. I think it was Simons scored.
I mean,
well, yeah. And then I had to find this out later because it wasn't really said. What we watched was Gage Bowers, freshman, hits a floater with about 2 seconds left to win the game for the Panthers. Starting off Saturday's buzzer beater bonanza, and that way you didn't have to say it, in a big way. So Miami Trace
almost had a Pike County buzzer beater bonanza. 2/3 of it was anyway.
Miami Trace wins it 43-41, all but locking up the FAC. I think they've still got to win one more game to like secure it, but it gives Jackson 2 league losses, and Miami Trace has won 3 straight games by 2 points.
No, they're like, it's an absolute tightrope act to the finish for them. Is they were pretty dominant the first time around, yes. I believe, but I think they must have had a lot of home conference games because I know they were at Chillicothe. Obviously, they were home this time around with Jackson, and this is a game that got pushed back. So do you think maybe this is something? Who else did they played somebody that I don't think, not Chillicothe or Jackson, but was it Courthouse? They played kind of close, but ended up kind of pulling away at the end. Like they were like losing, I think, in the second half to Washington Courthouse.
They were
losing, I remember right.
They were losing to Courthouse. Well, I'm pulling up their schedule now.
Obviously, a big match coming up. I think 2 weeks from this Tuesday. A week from Tuesday. That's next Tuesday, isn't it? Miami Trace and Minford is next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
So that's obviously a big one to look for. I think right now, if you had to make a pick, Minford might be playing a little bit better basketball. Either that or Miami Trace's opponents have figured something out that is.
Well, it's 3 of their last 5 because they won 2 other games last week that were not 2 points. But yeah, they were.
I mean, they still haven't lost.
Yes,
bottom line.
And that's all that matters. Since the year turned to 2025, they beat Circleville by 8, Washington by 7, Chillicothe by 2, Waverly by 2, and then pounded Wilmington and McClain. But then they beat Jackson by 2. So things are getting a little tighter, but
they're winning.
Yeah, you're winning, and that's the biggest thing.
Courthouse is such a weird team. They've been weird. Like they've been weird for a couple of years now. Where like. They'll lose by a lot. I mean, they lost to Jackson by 1 on the road, and then they lost to Miami Trace. I'm not sure if that was on the road or home, but it really doesn't matter because they're like 5 minutes apart or whatever. But when you play Miami Trace really close, so Courthouse is what, Division 4? I mean, that could be like kind of like Logan Elm last year.
Yeah, Courthouse is going to be in that like 7 through 10 spot where the 2,
that could be like
which is Jackson, and. Since if Jackson would beat Miami Trace, they might have been able to jump Megs, but probably not going to happen now. But it's it's going to be. It's not going to be fun.
I'm not saying it's going to happen, but and I probably won't pick it to happen, but Courthouse is like a sneaky, and it's harder this year because
they could also
finals,
lose that first game.
Right. Yeah. But I wouldn't be totally surprised if they were like a sneaky combo team. Mm-hmm. Now, it's like I said, it's a little bit more difficult because you have to make it to the final to get to the combo, but they play some teams, they'll get whacked, but then they'll play somebody really close or even beat somebody that maybe you didn't think they would. So, but once again, that's what makes high school basketball around here so much fun, is kind of the unpredictable. And that's kind of what Logan Elm did last year. I mean, you kind of expected them to lose. I think it was New Lexington it was Miami, it was Courthouse. Yeah, they beat Courthouse, and you kind of thought Courthouse would beat them, and I think they ended up losing to who? New Lexington. So they beat Unioto second, and I think that got them to the combo. Because you only had to win, obviously, a sectional final to get to the combo. So,
yeah. So even though we didn't, this is a team we haven't really talked about. If you watch the Coach's Call-In show, Cooper Stone King for Chillicothe was on there the other day. They have played an absurd amount of close games. So Chillicothe is 7-9. Their overall point differential is +4 on the season. So if you play a game at Chillicothe, which we, kind of mentioned with that Miami Trace game was at Chillicothe, they beat Hillsboro by 6 at home. Lost to Jackson by 2 at home, lost to Miami Trace by 2 at home. And then, just for fun, in tight games, they decided to go to Hillsboro last week, win by 3, and then win by 2 at Washington. So they're a team that's kind of all over the place as well. But it's going to be interesting to see what Miami Trace can do. They've still got 3 league games left. They've got Hillsboro twice and Washington once. So, I think last year someone slipped down at Hillsboro last year. I think it was Washington with a chance to win the league. So,
well, I know Hillsboro split with Jackson last year.
Yeah,
I know that was one.
I think it was late. That? Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if you already said that.
No, you're good. So, moving on in the Saturday's buzzer beater bonanza, North Adams 68, Western 67. North Adams, Carson Osborne connects on a really difficult 3 at the buzzer to win it for the Green Devils. We had talked about how they had kind of struggled in the non-league. I think they were 2-5 in the non-league going into that game. And so we thought it'd be kind of a toss-up in it, and turns out it was, as Osborne hits the really tough 3 to kind of break Western's hearts once again in Latham. They've had, they've as you mentioned.
I'm telling you, Western, they can't catch a break, which is kind of why I think they might catch a break in a big way here in a couple weeks once the tournament starts. Is maybe they'll start, it'll actually start falling their way instead of, they just keep losing by a point or 2 every time. Yeah,
because they lost a lot of close games last year as well. So they just got to get over the hump. Once they win a really tight game, which I thought was really when they beat Fairfield at Fairfield, because they won it.
That was a big win.
They had to get a stop. They got a stop in a made basket. And then, that's a big win. And sometimes that can get you over the top, but it clearly hasn't, because they've lost a lot of tight ones since then. But and then our last of the buzzer beater bonanza, Cade Leist, not Tucker Leist this time for Eastern Pike, in a 64-62 win over a really, really good New Hope Christian team. Leist hit a reverse layup to beat the Statesmen, assisted by Aiden Warner. It was a really good play design. So they had the ball with about a minute left, and they clearly were holding for the last shot. They used 3 timeouts in the last minute. The last one with about 10 seconds left. They ran an action to get Tucker Leist going to the corner, and where Tucker Leist went to the corner, Cade Leist slipped the screen inside because his man stepped out, because kind of assumed the ball was going to Tucker Leist on the outside. But the play design goes to Cade Leist, who makes a reverse layup. And then New Hope ran a really good play design, but Tucker Leist intercepted it and wins it for Eastern. So those are 2 teams that came in with 2 losses overall. New Hope had an 8-point loss to Minford, and the loss to Fairfield Union, which we had on stream, was kind of I'm not going to say worthless to see, but they were missing their top player, and so when he's been back, they only have 2 losses. So they've been really good outside of that. So he came back in the Minford game, which was a 8-point game. So so that's our kind of breakdown of this week's action. Some really good games.
All right. So our team of the week on the boys' side, It's going to be Minford this week, right? 15-1, still undefeated, 6-0 in the SOC 3. They go 3-0 on the week. Big win on the road. A pretty long trip. I think
on a Tuesday.
Where's Carroll? Is that? That's not in Fayette County, is it?
It's Fairfield County.
Or Fairfield County. I always get those two mixed up.
It's between Lancaster and Columbus, so not short.
Yeah, a long trip, like you said, on a Tuesday night, but a 16-point win at Bloom Carroll. But I think it was pretty close going into the fourth quarter.
It was a 2-point game going into the fourth.
But the Falcons obviously pulled away in a big way in that one. And then Friday night, a big win over South Webster, 57-49, and then they wrapped it all up with a win over a West team that I don't think is, quite at the same caliber as they were maybe a month ago. As they've kind of lost one of their better players due to the transferring schools rules.
It'd be nice if the transfer portal in college was like that.
Maybe
guys wouldn't be at maybe a certain Buckeye backup guard wouldn't be at his fifth school in 5 years.
But yeah, for Minford, 3-0 on the week. Big games all throughout for Montgomery, Bennett, Kaiser. Those have obviously been the big two for them, and obviously Shoemaker's averaging close to 10 points per game, so he's been a big part of that as well. I mean, it's three guys that have been, and you could even because they're obviously their roles have expanded over the course of the years, but it's really three guys that have been playing, I think, for at least 4 years. I mean, I know Montgomery, we saw him as a freshman, but like looking back, I can't really remember if Shoemaker or Kaiser played as much.
They came off the bench, like deeper in the bench, so they still played like a short lineup, but they had a really good senior class that year and good juniors as well. So, but yeah, they combined for 48. In that win over South Webster once again in the archives. It's what a crowd that night. Like it was just a crazy crowd before the JV game. I wish I knew the player who did it for South Webster, but they hit a half quarter in the JV game right before the half, which that place kind of exploded.
Yeah.
We had a dance off turn into a wrestling match at halftime of the varsity game.
I don't know.
Once again, hey, the Joker loses to Batman. Just like it's always been. Yeah. And, if you go back and watch that stream, which based off the numbers, a lot of you have, we appreciate, all that. Kenneth, I thought, did a really good job on the stream that night as well. You called a better game than I did because every time I was like, oh, you got to get the ball inside, Webster would splash a three. Yeah. So, but Montgomery and Kaiser, combined for 48, but I thought Ashton Reeder played really well in that game. Kate Glockner did a good job as well. They combined for 9 points between those two and Jackson Shoemaker. And that's all they got, out of the non-Kaiser and Montgomery in the Warren game. But I think the fact it was spread a little bit more, I think made it to where it makes it a little harder to guard. Where in the Warren game, they only had 3 guys score. Shoemaker had 9 in that game, but and that led to a loss. But you saw the bench shortened a good bit in that one. We didn't see
Donahoe didn't.
Yeah, we didn't see Donahoe at all in that game. We did see Ethan Cordell at the very end.
And Ty Borland checked in for a quick minute as well.
Yeah, and then Curtis Glenn, we saw more extended time. But sometimes you got to shorten the bench, and they were able to do so. In that game. And really when you think of Minford, you think of them as scoring. Like the fact that they can score, they can get up and down, and they can do a lot of different things in transition. They can shoot the ball. But the fact that they locked down defensively was a huge thing in this game. They held the big two for South Webster, Roberts and Schubert, who had been averaging right around 40. Yeah, right around 40 points a game to 16 in that game combined. So 15 of those came from Roberts. So they did a really good job defensively. I liked what I saw out of Bo Stevens for South Webster. Thought Christian White gave them a little bit of boost offensively as well. But that rematch, which I don't think will be at, because I think it's right during the girls' tournament stuff. So we'll see. But at South Webster should be a really good one as well. But South Webster's got to get some more guys scoring, which is crazy to say because when you look at,
I mean, you got about 35 points out of Barnard, White, and Stevens.
Yeah.
I mean, that's well over what they're averaging as a trio. And I'm not the big analytical guy. That's kind of what you're here for. But, I mean, for me, they shut down Dylan Schubert, and that was the difference in the game. I mean, you had a guy that was averaging over 16 points per game, and you held him to 1 point. And he really didn't. I mean, he took, 4 shots?
4 shots,
and I think he hit a free throw in the first quarter, and that was it. So,
well, that's what I mean. Like, they were able to, like, it's crazy to say that Webster needs more scoring options, but, like, I think the Minford kids, even if they're not shooting, at least, like, look at the basket. Because there's times where Webster had multiple people, like, because Roberts checked out, and when Roberts checked out, it was like, who's going to score the ball until Bo Stevens got the ball, and then Bo Stevens was being aggressive. But some of the other guys, you got to be more aggressive, because, like, that's way too good of a team to be 1 or 2 dimensional, which is crazy once again to say, because Minford very 2 dimensional, but you have the option of Jackson Shoemaker that can step out and knock down shots. And we've seen Cade Glockner on stream knock down 3 threes in a game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, that's gonna be a really fun second matchup over there.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it was last year. I mean, I think it was only what was it last year? Like 4 or 5 points at Minford, and then South Webster, I think, wins in overtime. So, we're talking about South Webster in this way. That was their first loss. Like, they're like 16-1. So, obviously
they've been very good.
Right. I mean, it's a team that still has, I think, state tournament aspirations.
I don't know if they're the favorite. I mean, to win it, because the Northwest is very good in the lower divisions, but I would say they're the favorite to get there and maybe get to the final. And then
I mean they're the number 1 rated team right now throughout the state in Max Preps RPI, and that was kind of the big thing about Friday, was that Minford's number 2 in the state in Division 5, just behind Luther and East. So it's a really big matchup.
Very good basketball teams.
Yeah, very, very good.
But so. Minford this week, they're at West on Tuesday and at Wheelersburg on Friday. That game at Wheelersburg is kind of a sneaky one. They won that very easily at home. But if you look at what Wheelersburg's done at home versus on the road, they've been much tougher at home. They played South Webster to a 5-point game at home, lost by 40 over at South Webster. So I would say keep an eye on that game on Friday. And I will tell you who else is going to keep an eye on it is the Minford kids, because I don't think they're going to overlook anybody. But
yeah, they don't really appear to me as a team that can kind of get caught off guard by like a trap game or something like that. They seem like they prepare pretty well, and I think it says a lot about coaching. Obviously, one of the better coaches in our area, and Josh Shoemaker, and you're kind of seeing why. Like, kind of what I was getting to earlier is it's 3 guys and Montgomery, Kaiser, and Shoemaker that have played 3 or 4 years. You know, they've come up short a couple of years in a row. But it's kind of all culminating into, like, they're going crazy this year. So.
Well, and I just throw this out there. We've talked about these teams, and a lot of them are down by the river. How good was their youth coaching coming up? Like, obviously, like, Miles is probably going to be really good at whatever sport he did, because, like, he's just so dynamic and athletic. Kaiser's going to be 6'7". Eli Roberts is going to be 6'8". But, like, these are still really skilled kids. Brody Buchanan, really skilled kids. So you've got some really, really talented kids. So their youth coaching must have been outstanding. So that's something that I think can't be overlooked, because in some areas where right now basketball is not as good, I would just say, like, you got to figure it out at the youth level. You got to get everyone to buy in. It can't just be, expecting just because you win championships at a young age that it's going to carry over. You got to get those skills right that are going to carry over. And you see it whenever we go down to do these games where they're just making plays that you're not seeing everywhere. So
basketball a little further south is a little better than it is the more north you get, it seems. So
yeah, but I don't know. I was going to say we're better at baseball, but I mean, Minford goes to the Final Four every other year. So
probably favorite again this year, obviously. So
yeah, and then Wheelersburg went like 8 straight years to the Final Four. So I don't think we've got that on them anymore either. So I mean, shout out to youth coaches down in Sauter County and Lawrence County and Shackland as well. So yeah, moving on. We got some previews, but we're not going to go deep into these ones. But on Tuesday, if you watch us on Tuesday, there are 2 massive games. One is a non-league game, St. Trace at Jackson. I think maybe lost a little bit of its luster based off of what Jackson did to Unioto and then what Unioto did to St. Trace. But I think this one could be really good as well.
What do you mean? It should be a 40-point game.
Right. Exactly. Ignore the transitive property on that. But and then Ironton at Chesapeake on Tuesday. Those are two games. Definitely keep an eye out for those two. Chesapeake, once again, has only lost the one game, but they also haven't played Ironton and Fairland at all in league play. So if they want to win the league, it starts on Tuesday. So
I'm changing one of our quick picks.
Okay, do that. So, and then next, our stream on Friday is going to be Oak Hill at Northwest. Both of these teams started off really well. And we had kind of picked this as a streamable game about 2 weeks ago?
And
since then they have.
Oh, you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I thought you were talking about Chesapeake and Fairland.
Since then, it's been a bit of a struggle for both Oak Hill and Northwest, but I think they match up pretty well with each other. Oak Hill's going to come into the game 10-8 or 11-8 or 10-9. They play Western on Wednesday. Pretty senior heavy. Joseph Anthony, Ethan O'Connor, Andy Meldick, all seniors that really provide positive things for them. Colvin Buechler, a freshman, Will Morgan, a junior, those guys all are going to contribute big things for them. They've lost 4 straight, but the biggest thing, they doubled last year's win total. So it's kind of, we want to give them a chance to showcase what they've done to get to that spot. I think they're a pretty well-coached team. That their coach has been there for a while, Coach McKinnis. And, it's trying to rebuild things because Oak Hill won a state championship in the late 2000s. I think it was 2008, may have been 2009, but they won a state championship with Coach Pearson that's over at South Webster now. And they're trying to just rebuild things. And seems like, the baseball program's done a good job over there of kind of rebuilding. Football seems like they were better this year, but it's a long process when things go as south as they did for Oak Hill, but it looks like they're on the uprise. And then Northwest coming in at 10-7. Brennan Weiss has been really good for them. Transfer from Valley. He's been really good. He was over 20 points in a win last week.
A big part of that went over Eastern.
Yeah,
whenever that was.
I think that was the game you had the really big game.
Yeah, I think he had over 20, but I mean that's been about 3 weeks ago. I think maybe not that long, but
sophomores Aiden Armbruster, Ivan Ely as well. They've got some other guys that really contribute. They do a really good job down there in Mohawk Land. Looking forward to getting down there. Quality wins for Northwest over Valley, and then as you mentioned, Eastern Pike. So both these teams are Division 5. This is kind of their last hurrah to try to avoid Minford, I would guess, in the second round. But a win goes a long way for either side. And as I just mentioned, they treat us well down there. And it's a really good place to call a game. So looking forward to getting down there for the first time this year.
I think just looking at the rosters, I think Oak Hill may be a little more spread out than Northwest is. I will say for Northwest, obviously the historic season last year, you win your first district title in school history, and then you lose all 5 of your starters to graduation. And then obviously Wolfenbarker makes the jump to Portsmouth West. But I think for Northwest, preseason, I feel like the over-under on their win total would have been 7.5. And they still may not go 500. I mean, you have to win. What do you play? 22 regular season games. So they would still have to win 2 more to be over 500. But I mean, sitting at 10-7, I don't think a lot of people expected them to get to 10 wins just based on what they lost from the transfer portal and even to graduation, as you basically graduated everybody. You weren't in it yet. You benefit from Brendan Weiss coming over from Valley. Ivan Ely comes back as kind of the 6th guy that rotated in last season. And then Aiden Armbruster, I think we've kind of projected him to be a big force inside for Coach Scarberry, which it seems like he has kind of been this season for the Mohawks. I haven't seen Oak Hill play basketball since I've been with SOSA, so this will be a first for me.
Do you want me to be honest? I saw their girls for a couple quarters this year.
Okay.
That's it. I've seen them play baseball.
You alluded to it. Oak Hill hasn't been very good the last handful of years, so I just haven't had the opportunity to see them. We're going to add 2 new teams to our coverage tree this weekend. It's not too often this late in the season you get to add 2 teams with 1 game, but this will be one of them. So excited to get. It's like you said, McDermott. It's always nice to get down to Northwest. I mean, whether we're talking about basketball, or football. They treat us really well. It's a nice gymnasium. One of the funnier murals or whatever you want to call it, like the massive
that thing
Indian,
is so big.
The 40-foot Indian inside the gymnasium. But it's a nice place to go. And like you said, I'm excited to get back down there.
You mentioned, I don't think you looked at their schedule when you said they may not go 500. They play Sims Valley, who they just lost to by 20, but it's at home. So, I mean, that's a positive. But then Oak Hill, at West, at Eastern, at Western to finish.
Eastern, I mean, seriously, they're going to have to fight.
They're going to have to win this game.
So any of those so Eastern is the only. So what, have they beat South Gallia twice and Eastern once? Is that their 3 conference wins? South Gallia 2 times.
That's what it looks like.
So I mean, they're going to have to play all these conference opponents. So they've got 6. So they've got 4 more conference games against teams they were 1-3 with the first time around. So that, I mean, let's say they beat Eastern again. I mean, that puts them at 11-10. And then what do you say, West?
Yeah. It's West, who even without Wolfenbarker beat Valley, who beat Chesapeake, which once again you can't do the transitive stuff, but they've shown at times they're still capable. So I mean it's at West, which it's never easy to win on the West side. So
unless you're Waverly, then it's not.
That was a very impressive game.
It's not too bad.
But for Oak Hill, it's not much easier for them to.
No,
to
the
finish
SOC too
over.
is tough. I mean, and for them, they've got 4 more conference games. Now, we know they beat Northwest the first time. I'm guessing their other win was against South Gallia. So I'm guessing they'll get to play them one more time. Then I think they have Western, I think, one more time as well.
Western on Wednesday at Northwest versus South Gallia and then versus Eastern.
Yeah. So I mean, these are 2 teams that are tight-roping on whether they're on the good side of 500 or the bad side of 500. And it's ultimately going to come down to the wire. Now, what'd you say so how many games? Do both of these teams play 3 games this week?
2 for
2 for both.
Yeah.
Okay, and are all 4 of those games before the draw?
Actually, there's 3 for Northwest, but the
one's on Saturday.
Okay.
So I mean, 2 big games for both teams. One of them for each is against each other. And then you said for Oak Hill at Western, or at least against Western on Wednesday. So
2 wins for them would probably bump.
They're back to back in Division 5 right now.
One of those would probably bump them up into the 9, which probably is not where you want to be because that's Minford in that second round. But really, nothing against South Point or Portsmouth, but if you match up there, you probably don't hate it.
Right.
With where Wheelersburg has shown what they've been at times this year, you probably don't hate that matchup in the first round as a possible winnable game, even though that's sure Wheelersburg would have a little bit of vengeance on their mind against Northwest. But
Division 5 is just so top heavy but it's also spread out at the same time, but it's just so top heavy that I think Oak Hill and Northwest would be kind of like sleeper teams in about Division 6 or Division 7. But when you have Minford, Fairland, Chesapeake, and Ironton as your top 4, it's I'm not sure if anybody can upset any of those teams. Now, we know Valley beat Chesapeake the other day, so maybe how good is Chesapeake, right? I mean, they're undefeated in conference play still, a big one with Fairland this week, but
that's okay. So let's say Northwest stays in the 11. It doesn't look like either of them can drop below the 11 right now. I mean, Eastern Brown, not the best matchup, but I think technically could be gettable. But then you'd match up maybe with Chesapeake, so you probably don't hate being the 11 because you'd still have to upset 2 good teams. But as you mentioned, Valley beating Chesapeake, I think has to make a lot more teams look like at least consider this, maybe we can get them. I don't know if you can, but maybe. I mean, there's always that chance. So
really for Portsmouth, beating Chillicothe and Notre Dame is why they're currently, what are they? They're 6-11 and in the 9 spot. Those 2 wins have but also for them having opponents of Ironton, Fairland, and Chesapeake really bump up the opponent win percentage. So I think the phone is ringing. And
I didn't realize we had a phone in the studio. At least it's not in here with us. But
I don't think we can. You probably won't be able to hear it on the audio. But a big one at Northwest. this Friday, but also a big one along the river in Proctorville this Friday as Chesapeake and Fairland are going to match up for the first time this season. Now, come Friday, currently both teams still undefeated in league play, but for Chesapeake, that could be a little bit different as you have a big one with Ironton. I think that's on Tuesday is when that one is. But it doesn't. Fairland also plays. Does Fairland play Ironton again this week, or is that next week?
I believe that's next.
But
I can pull it up very quickly.
For Chesapeake and Fairland, currently both the last remaining undefeated teams in the OVC, both with only one loss overall, as Chesapeake is 17-11 with that loss to Valley a couple of weeks ago, and then Fairland 16-1 with a loss to Warren. So
Fairland already beat them twice.
Oh, Fairland's already played Ironton twice. What happened in this other game?
It was 14 points at Fairland, but I mean, it feels like Ironton's playing really well right now, which is also probably why we didn't really talk about that game last week ahead of time, that Ironton and Fairland, because that first result. But yeah, they've got Fairland's at Portsmouth on Tuesday.
Okay.
So, and then Chesapeake, as we mentioned, with Ironton on Tuesday as well. But Chesapeake 17-1, 10-0 in the OVC. Maddox Casey, the sophomore, it has been the big one for him this year. Caden Perkins has had some big games as well. Jacob Skeens, Ethan Kearns we saw last year.
Ethan Kearns.
Yeah, both are seniors. Philip Thacker, only a junior. I saw some really good stuff from him as a freshman, so I'm just guessing kind of progressively getting better throughout as well. So this is a Chesapeake team that is kind of, I think in a really good position because their JV team, I mentioned it to you on Saturday, 17-1 as well. So they've been really good at both of those levels this year. I think Coach Ader does a really good job with them. But this is a really big one. I'm excited to see this. I think Fairland, I'm assuming the Fairland Dragon will have this one. But, Fairland 16-1, 11-0 in the OVC. As I mentioned, Portsmouth on Tuesday. Brody Buchanan, 1,000-point scorer. He just kind of makes everything go for them. The lefty point guard going to Rio Grande has been outstanding. Cliff Franson, Trevor Locko. They're juniors, and they seem like they are starting to really make big impacts throughout the games for them. So it's kind of the progression you see from different players as maybe you play a little bit as a sophomore, you start as a junior, and then you kind of take over in a big way as a senior. And I think both of those two are going to do that for Fairland. And that's going to make them even better down the stretch this year as well. So Keegan Smith, a senior, made one of the bigger plays of the football season this year.
I was rewatching that last night. I was looking through all of our shorts.
Yeah, Gabe Polson, another senior, one of their better soccer players they've ever had, along with Locko as well. So doesn't get any easier for them.
Polson, or it was Locko, was the OVC offensive soccer player of the year, and I think Polson set some kind of school record or something.
Scoring. Yeah. So things don't get easier for Fairland. As Saturday they host South Webster. So
the thing for Fairland is we saw him twice really early in the season. We haven't seen him since then, and we probably won't see him unless they make it to the combo. One interesting thing about this matchup is that if they both sit at 2 and 3, you're probably going to see it for a third time. Right? I mean, at least it'll be favored to happen for a third time. Is obviously 1 and 4 on the same side, and then 2 and 3 are on the same side as two teams get out of Division 5. So
I think Chesapeake's got to win one of these two games this week
to stay at the 3.
Yeah, because
but also
they're still almost two.
Would Chesapeake drop below Ironton?
That's the only one.
There's no way you beat a team twice. But since I know it doesn't matter because it's like all analytical or whatever.
Well, Chesapeake and Ironton haven't played yet until Tuesday.
I thought you said it was Fairland and Ironton had played twice. Okay, my bad.
Yeah, so Ironton is like, I don't know how to say it, like point wise. It's like almost 2 points behind Chesapeake, but I think if they beat them, and then they would win on Friday. Like if Chesapeake goes 0-2, I think Chesapeake has a chance to drop to the 4. But they're not going to drop below the 4 because
it's 1.7 behind Chesapeake.
I guess if
it's just funny because you look at the records and it's like Minford, Fairland, Chesapeake, 14-1, 16-1, 17-1, and then Ironton in the 4 at 10-5. Like,
well, it's just Chesapeake's non-league schedule has just been.
no, it hasn't been great.
Well, not only has their non-league schedule not been great, but they haven't played the two best teams in the OVC, so it hurts them point-wise.
Right.
As far as opponents.
So you're talking, so they play Fairland and Ironton twice, like the last 2 weeks of the season. That's crazy. And they could end up matching up with one of them again in the postseason, which is
I wonder
crazier.
if the first Ironton matchup was supposed to be right when football season ended, and maybe it got bumped. I know that the second Fairland game got bumped back because we were talking about going down to that.
Yeah, we were absolutely going to go to that one.
Yeah,
I've never been to Chesapeake. I mean, I know it's far away.
It is very far, but
we were pretty desperate. We were pretty desperate to find a basketball game for that week because everything was getting postponed.
Yeah, and then we saw that one. We're like, oh,
yeah,
all right. So like
they kind of got the worst of all the snow that
came
in.
So in their non-conference, like they played Adina, who dropped off significantly. Fairview, which it's got to be close because Fairview, whenever we've looked at their schedules, like they're the team that like has been laughably bad. I mean, they beat those two.
I don't think their girls' team is very good either.
Well, I think it's the girls' team that was like the really bad one. But they beat those two back-to-back games by a combined 82 points. And they beat Raceland, Franklin Monroe. They pounded some of these other teams. Like they played Trimble. Like they couldn't have known that was coming. Like Trimble's drop-off has been significant as well. Like Trimble and Adina, well, they did play each other over at the Logan holiday shootout thing.
I don't want. Did Adina beat him?
No, Trimble did. Oh. That was Trimble's first win. They've won 2 total now, but
Adina beat somebody, didn't
Westlaw.
They? Oh gosh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, that was part of But yeah, it's Chesapeake's non-league hasn't been the toughest, which is partially why they're fighting for that 3 seed right now, as opposed to maybe fighting for a 2 seed. But yeah, this is a big one on Friday. I think. Are we doing this as a quick pick?
Yes. No.
No. Okay. So I think in this one, I think I would take Fairland. I think they're a little more experienced, a little more big game experience as well. They've played the tougher schedule. They've done very well against the tougher schedule as well. I mean, they beat just on our stream. They beat Eastern Brown and handily beat North Adams. Yeah. So they've been really good this year. I've been impressed with what they've been able to do after losing a really nice senior class last year, but it just seems like they've gotten better. Like you beat a Sims Valley team by 23, beat Hillsboro by 21, who I think Hillsboro has been kind of a disappointment a little bit from what we expected, but still that was a really impressive win. They've done well.
Ready to go on to the quick picks?
Yeah, let's go. Let's have some picks that are quick.
We've got a little bit of time.
I'm terrible at this, by the way. I have dropped off significantly.
You have. You went from like a 4-game lead to a 4-game deficit quick.
It's been bad.
The games we're going to be picking this week, obviously 5 games on tap. Quick picks powered by Views Gym. Zane Trace at Jackson, Waverly at Valley, Hillsboro at Fairfield. That was a makeup game. Ironton at Chesapeake, and South Webster at Fairland. The current standings, I'm 43-24. John is 39-28. I think I gained 2 more games last week.
Yeah, I thought it was more than that. I thought it was 3.
But yeah, those are the games we're going to pick this week. We've got about 15 seconds before we go. I'd have to go back and look at the graphics to see exactly how big the switch, like the flip is.
It's been bad.
But since I'm currently in the lead, I'll pick first for all of these.
It's all because I never picked the Fairfield Union Girls.
All right. Game 1 going to be Zane Trace at Jackson. We talked about it in the preview of that game, this very short preview. Jackson, I mean, just from last week, I think I would have picked Jackson anyway, but even more so now. They beat Unioto pretty handily on Tuesday, and then Unioto completed the season sweep of Zane Trace. So I'm going to go with Jackson in this one. They're one of the top teams in Division 4.
Yes. Zane Trace, they've got to figure some things out because it's just against these better teams they've played, they haven't been able to score. and they got to figure something out on offense. They got to get a little bit more out of Grady Stewart in these bigger games. Landon Gerald, I think, is going to have a bounce back game in this one. But, man, Jackson just too big, too strong. It doesn't matter if they make outside shots because they're going to get to the basket. Interested to see if Zane Trace zones them early and if they're able to rebound out of it. But ultimately, I'm going to take Jackson in this one. I do think it's going to be a little closer than what maybe we expect.
All right, game 2, Waverly at Valley. It was a 2-point win for the Tigers at home about like 5 or 6 games ago. I'm not sure exactly how many like days or so it was ago, but since that one, Valley they had like an 8-point loss at Minford. They have wins over Wheelersburg and Chesapeake, handing the Panthers their only loss. Waverly's been playing better as well. These are 2 teams that have really picked it up in the second half of the season. Ultimately, I'm going to go with the home team. I think Valley evens up the season series in this one.
Yeah, it seems like Waverly is playing better, but having a hard time getting wins. They lose by 2 to Miami Trace. I know they lost a tighter one with Wheelersburg as well.
They were winning with like 4 minutes to go in the fourth.
Yeah, so it seems like Waverly maybe has hit a wall a little bit when it goes to their youth. I do think Alexander, Russell, the Myers twins, I think they have a really nice core, but ultimately I am going to go with the home team as well. Give me Valley and a tight one.
All right, game 3, Hillsboro at Fairfield. This is a makeup game from the week we had all the snow here in southern Ohio. It's a big matchup in Highland County between the Indians and Lions. Hillsboro struggled a little bit in the conference this year with FAC Player of the Year Tate Davis. Fairfield, I think right now is number 4 in Division 7 when you look at the Max Preps RPI. Ultimately, I'm going to go with Hillsboro in this one. They had that big win on the road against North Adams, and North Adams took care of Fairfield. So I'm going to use transitive property on this one and take the Indians.
I'm going to take the opposite. Like I got to try to make up a game here.
Yeah.
I like Fairfield at home. They've been really good at home over the last few years. They've been really good everywhere, really. But
they have like 5 losses in the last like 3 seasons.
So I'm going to ignore that McClain loss. Just throw it out. Throw that loss to McClain out last week. Tate Davis is outstanding for Hillsboro, but I think that the McIntosh is going to be the ultimate difference maker in this one for Fairfield in a tight one.
No, I mean, matchups are a big part of a lot of these games. Game 4, Ironton at Chesapeake. Man, I really liked what I saw out of Ironton against Portsmouth. The Valley loss for Chesapeake makes me question, are they really a 17-1 team, or maybe are they a little bit lower than that? These teams are back-to-back in the RPI with Chesapeake at 3 and Ironton at 4. I kind of like the Fighting Tigers in this one. I'm going to roll with Ironton.
I was hoping you'd go the other way. I was hoping you'd go with the home team. But, yeah, I think Ironton has been, they're big, strong, tough. They've been road warriors. They've had to play more games because things got pushed back. So not getting a ton of practice time, but it seems like on the floor in games they're getting better throughout the year. Chesapeake, this is a show me game for them.
Yeah.
But until they prove it, I'm also going to take Ironton in this one. I think this one has the chance to be really interesting, though. All
right, in Game 5, we've got about a minute to go. South Webster at Fairland. About as big as a non-conference matchup as you can get, as it's number 1 in Division 7 and number 1 in Division 5 in the Southeast District. South Webster suffering their first loss to Minford. Fairland has been pretty solid. I say pretty solid. They only have 1 loss this season. They're like 15 or 16-1. I'm not sure how long the trip is from South Webster to Fairland, but I think I'm going to take the Jeeps in this one.
It's probably just back roads.
They're still like 17-1. I mean, they've looked dominant outside of that 1 7-point loss, which a lot of teams would kill for against Minford. So I'm going to roll with Norm Pearson and the Jeeps.
Give me the Dragons. I'm going to take the Dragons in this one. I think, size-wise, Roberts should be able to, but he didn't really want to go inside against Minford, and we'll see if there's a difference in this one. I think this one has the chance to be the game of the week, though, but I'm going to take the Dragons at home. Brody Buchanan makes a big play down the stretch to win it.
There you go. That was about right on time.
I tried to get it. Yeah, I couldn't.
It's weird. So when I do it in Premiere Pro, the timer that I put on it is like a little quicker than that, because sometimes in the office we'll look at it and we'll get it in time by 6 or 7 seconds, but when I put the timer on it, we get it by half a second. So I usually that was probably when I put the timer up there.
That was 2 seconds. Yeah.
When I put the timer on there, we seriously probably got it by less than a second. But I think for South Webster and Fairland, I don't know if Fairland has.
I don't know if they have the depth.
Well, I was going to say I don't know if they have a big that can match up with Roberts. I mean, obviously Minford has Kaiser. Is Cliff Franson going to guard
him or Smith? And Smith's really athletic.
And Keegan Smith is pretty athletic. I think he's about as comparable to Bennett Kaiser as you're going to get around here. Maybe not quite as tall, but I mean, talk about athleticism. And I mean, if Roberts plays how he did against Minford, it'll be easier for Smith because Roberts didn't really look to be a threat on the inside, which would make guarding him for Keegan Smith a lot easier.
One of the possessions, and I said something on it, or like they needed to look inside, and it was Montgomery was guarding Roberts inside, but he didn't really fight to get open. It was just kind of like
I don't know if he wants. It's like he doesn't. I mean, outstanding. I mean, if you can have a guy that big that can play from the outside like he can, I mean, you should have, District Player of the Year candidate all the time. But it just, and I've only seen them play one time, so he could have been doing it. I guess I saw him a little bit against North Adams, but especially in the game against Minford, it just didn't seem like he was interested in playing inside at all and kind of taking advantage of the size he has. Now, his advantage is nullified a little bit against Minford with Kaiser and Shoemaker, but like in a game against Fairland coming up, what is that, like Friday or Saturday this week? Like he's going to have a pretty big size advantage inside because I'm not sure Franson is quick enough to guard him, and you have a guy in Keegan Smith that is definitely quick enough.
4 or 5 inches shorter.
Right, but I'm not sure he's got the length. I mean, you talk about just height, but I mean, you're talking about wingspan too.
The other thing that Roberts does, and when I've seen him play before and he's gone inside, he has nice post moves.
Right.
And he elevates. I don't know if he elevates as much as Kaiser does on his jumpers, but he still elevates really well on his jumpers. So it's going to be hard to even contest. So I think if he can get inside and play in the mid-range, he could be absolutely dynamic. And I think in this game, he probably needs to. If he does that, my pick is going to be wrong. But if he stays up the same 3-point line and they can contest it and his teammates aren't uber aggressive, I feel good about it. But yeah, I think this will be I think that's going to be a really fun one.
Nah,
I might just drive down there.
On Saturday?
Yeah.
You're going to drive down to Fairland?
Maybe.
All right.
Although they do stream it, so that
do stream it.
Yeah, that might save me some.
Fairland has Chesapeake on Friday and South Webster. Fairland's probably team of the week next week if they can get a couple of wins this week.
Yeah.
All right. We can go ahead and move on to the girls segment. A lot of big games, a lot of big league games last week amongst our coverage area. We'll start off with McClain and Hillsboro meeting for the second time, and McClain is now 4-0 against us in the quick picks as we picked this game twice, and we both picked Hillsboro in both of them. But with McClain with a pair of 2-point wins on the season over Hillsboro to claim the FAC title. They still have a little bit of work to do to clinch out the gold ball in the FAC, but they've all but wrapped up the league title in the FAC. 19-1, 9-0 in conference play. Their one loss, who was that against? I don't even remember. It was early.
Fayetteville.
Fayetteville Perry. Yeah, he's one of the top teams. They've got a league title game coming up this week that was supposed to be last week, and we previewed it last week. We'll kind of get into that.
We're going to do a super preview of it this week.
But for McClain, obviously Paisley Pryor has been without a doubt one of the top players in the FAC. I mentioned her preseason as one of my picks to win Player of the Year. I think it's going to come down to probably her and Dailey Davis as two of the top picks. That's going to be a tough. Like I would hate to be in the decision, I would hate to be in the war room.
Well, and especially if Hillsboro would have won this game.
And that's what makes it tough is you have Pryor, who I think is the consensus best player on the best team in the league. But then you have Dailey Davis, who basically has a double-double in every game.
And here's the fun part. Both are sophomores.
Right.
So, I mean, this
is a matchup we're going to get for 2 more years.
But, in this one, if you stuck with the
third quarter got
a little dicey because just sometimes the internet does what the internet does sometimes. But I thought that Carson Kemp did a really good job calling us. Caleb Cox, I think it was the second game he's ever done on the camera for us. So he'd done a baseball game. I thought he did a really good job of trying to navigate below or like with the crowd, because in a game like that, if there's not like a crow's nest, you can get a lot of hands and excited fans. And but if you watch the playback, you can see the entirety of what Lara Henson was doing on the play as she drives baseline, misses the first shot, she really was the only one that went for the offensive rebound. She gets the offensive rebound and scores it with 2.3 seconds to play. Derek Webb on his face or Twitter, I think he might have put it on Facebook as well, had a good video baseline of it. But if you want to watch the game back, there's a little freeze issue in the third quarter, but beyond that, it's a good call on in our archives as well.
I think it was second most viewed girls game of this, just behind Unioto and Harvest Prep.
Yeah.
So
Henson, obviously game winner, 14 points, 9 rebounds. She had an outstanding game. Prior, as you mentioned, she had 15. Now, Brenna Wright, Leah Lovett, and Eikenberry none of them had a big game, but they combined for 10 points, and that 10 points ultimately helped put them over the top. They are going to be the 3 seed. McClain is in Division 4, which means we would not see a rematch unless it got to a district final, which
with Hillsboro and McClain?
Yeah.
I think it would have to be a regional, wouldn't it? Because
I think only one team gets out.
Oh, does only one team get out? So there is a no. Oh yeah, there is. Yeah, it is one.
Yeah, only one team gets out in the Southeast, which is dumb. But
because I think because Hillsboro, like, obviously they have to do some work in the tournament leading up to it, but it would be like I think who's the other team in there? Is it Circleville?
Fairfield.
Circleville.
They would play
but I'm saying Circleville would play McClain, and then Hillsboro would play Fairfield.
Yeah. So Hillsboro drops to last thing on McClain. They host Miami Trace on Wednesday. Chance to win the gold ball in the FAC, their first league championship. I believe it was in like 4 years.
It's 2020.
Yeah. So
2019, 2020 season. So.
Yeah, so outstanding season so far for McClain. They've had a couple of like stranger tight ones. Like the Waverly game was kind of strange. They played really good defense late to beat an Adina team that I think people don't particularly want to run into in the postseason. But yeah, they've done an outstanding job. Shana Massey's done it. Shania Massey has done an outstanding job over there as their head coach, and just a really nice team over in Greenfield. So for Hillsboro, kind of the big thing in this one, you mentioned Tylee Davis. She has held to only 5 points in the game. Hillsboro drops to 16-3, 8-2 in the FAC. They were led by freshman Ella Jordan. She had 9 points, 8 rebounds. Peyton Bledsoe with 9. Kobe Miles with 8, including some big-time free throws late in that one. The biggest thing, though, they were held to 1 point in the first quarter and outscored 14-6 in the fourth quarter. So they dominated the middle, but it was the outside, kind of the bread of the sandwich they struggled with.
The crust.
Yeah, the crust. They were a little bit of a struggle and really rebounding on that last play because I think they kind of assumed Henson was making it, as Henson was the only one that really followed it. Really nice individual play by Henson, but which we've seen at both of our streams we've had with McClain. She had the block to really put that game away against Adina, and then she has the game-winning basket.
She had the block, she had the rebound, she had the shot.
Yeah, like she's done everything in our streams. So
if you want somebody to be on your team in the last like 20 seconds, the last like 10 seconds of a game, it's Lara Henson apparently, because the 2 times we've seen her, I mean, the last 5 seconds obviously in this one a little more than that, as she had 14 and 9. I don't think she had quite that against Adina, but had an outstanding close to the game as she ultimately forced the miss, courtesy of an assist to the McClain student section in that one. That was kind of funny.
But that crowd was really impressive.
No,
that's really cool. Like we talked about it with the Miami or the Minford and South Webster game. Like the crowds bring so much. Like, part of why we're doing this show too is to like highlight certain games, but like go out and you need to get out and watch these games. Like we like having people watching our streams, but man, it's so much better for the kids and the atmosphere for the crowds to be there. So it was really cool to see that. Speaking of Adina,
I was going to say Hillsboro's got a tough week this week. Thankfully, after the draw, but
they're at White Oak on Thursday. I think they play on Monday, which we're taping the show on Monday. So they would have 3 total games left. So I think that's I think they play Monday, Wednesday, or Monday, Thursday, Saturday, and then Saturday is versus Adina. That one should be a really interesting game, as well as Adina seems to be playing really well at this point, just like Hillsboro is, besides the 2 2-point losses.
All right, I'll kind of let you go over to this next game since I think you were at this one, if I remember right. Minford, a 50-47 win over West to remain unbeaten in the SOC 3. Minford boys and girls is a combined 13-0, I think, in conference play. So I think boys is 6-0. West has been like a dangerous team. They've been I feel like they've been kind of inconsistent this year. Like they'll play somebody really close and even beat somebody, but then they'll drop a game. Now this one obviously came down to the wire, just a 3-point loss for the Senators. It's a really young team for West.
Yeah. So for West, and that's part of it. We've talked about it a little bit before. Well, like they beat Valley by 40 at a game I was at, and then they lost to Valley a week later. So they've not been very consistent, which is why they're 11-8. But you mentioned them being young. In this game, Allie Buckner had 20. She's a sophomore. Braylee Pistol had 13. She's a freshman. And then Macy Wisman had 10. She's a sophomore. And also, one of the most impressive things about West, they're the first team I've ever seen with multiple face guards on because of multiple broken noses. Like, usually you see one, if you see any. But, yeah, they had two at the same time. They've been inconsistent throughout the year, but I think they're just going to get better and better throughout. And you're going to see them. They're a team in the postseason you probably don't want to run into. They're the 5 seed in Division 6. For Minford, they were led in this game by Lindsey Williams with 17 points. The Radford commit was just really good inside and out. Kerrigan Davis, the freshman, 12 points coming off the bench. Made a big three in the first half, and then the second half she made a couple of really tough baskets. There was one fast break when they went on an extended run. I believe it was an 11-0 run to end the third and to start the fourth, and it was highlighted by Kerrigan Davis getting a pass from Maggie Reisner, and she really could have probably slowed down, but just went full momentum and scored it. Forcing a timeout was a big play by the freshman. She's been outstanding when I've seen her. Lexi Conkle hit a couple of big threes in this one. She had 11. They were down by 6 late in the third, and she connected from 3 to cut it to 3 after 3, and then they went on an 8-0 run to start the fourth. She fed Lindsey Williams in there. Williams made the shot to cut it to 1. Davis put them ahead. And then Maggie Reisner, who had 8, had a putback. Marley Pendleton had a basket. Kerrigan Davis with another one. It was a full team effort for them in this one, and that's why they are undefeated in SOC3 play. It's almost all seniors because that's not even mentioning Ava Cronin, Lexi Pendleton, Bailey Hammonds. They're very senior heavy, but getting what they get out of Kerrigan Davis is such a positive, and that's why they are at 7-0 in the SOC3. On Monday, they play Wheelersburg at home. That's a really big one, obviously. I think we're going to have pictures from that one. Because I think Derek is kind of on his deathbed as of Monday. So, and then Brock is going to be at Green at Notre Dame. So we'll have coverage in a way of that one. I think they do their student broadcast as well, which, I mean, obviously, I don't know why I'm saying it because, I mean, our show drops on Tuesday, and that's on Monday. So, but that's going to be a big one as well. This one, I think we saw what West will have in the future. The big thing at the end of the game, they called their last time out with a minute left, and that kind of killed them at the end. They get an offensive foul. They draw an offensive foul with like 7 seconds left, down by 3. They get the ball underneath. It was kind of weird because I thought it should have probably been on the side because the offensive foul, but ends up being underneath. Without the timeout, they end up going to the baskets for a 2 where you needed the 3. Didn't fall anyway. And with, the way Buckner and Pistol were shooting, I think I would have taken, would have liked the chances of one of them hitting. But I don't think Buckner scored in the fourth. I think they did a really good job of just not even letting her get the ball in the fourth. I thought Haley Carver played well for West as well. It's a West team that you're going to see, I think, next year, if we do this again, you're going to see them be the pick for the SOC3, where this year it was Minford. I think West and Wheelersburg, which they're going to play on Thursday, I think has a chance to be a really good rivalry for the next couple of years as well. They also play South Point on Saturday. So sneaky game there because we've been able to identify how talented South Point's been throughout this year. As we both picked Wheelersburg, and that was a bad pick for both of us because it was not close.
Who was it? Wheelersburg and who?
South Point. Girls.
Who did I pick?
We both picked Wheelersburg.
Did South Point girls beat Wheelersburg?
By a lot.
Did they?
It was like 56-33 or something.
Oh my gosh, I don't even remember that.
Yeah. It was, yeah. So this one, obviously goes to Minford, senior heavy, well-coached team. And they were able to get to the 3 seed in Division 6, which is kind of where they wanted to get. The only problem is where Fairland took the Southwest route, it will put them in a regional with Portsmouth. But if they play Portsmouth, it would be a regional final, and I think they would take that any day. So even if it's not maybe it's not the best matchup, Portsmouth's not the best matchup for anybody, honestly. Right. They're number 1 in Division 5 in the state for a reason. They've beaten some really, really talented teams throughout the year, regardless of division. So it doesn't matter. But if you get to a regional final, you get to a regional final, and then you kind of play your cards while you're there. So good win for Minford. Always good to get down there, as we mentioned, and they were very helpful afterwards, helping us set up for the next night. And
then one other game that took place this last week, a big one in the MSL, is Fairfield Union for the second time this season took down Circleville. This one was a little closer than the first time around. I believe it was an 11-point win, or 10 or 11-point win the first time around. For the Falcons, this one a lot closer. I believe this one was at Circleville, yes, which may have played a little bit into the final. But
this one also a really good crowd.
Yeah. I mean, it's a 41-35 win for Fairfield Union. I believe they were the only undefeated and one-loss teams in the league. So this ultimately would have either been a split league championship. I think for Circleville, that is it for league play. Yes. I think 12 games is it. I think Fairfield Union still has one more to go to complete the league, to complete the gold ball. Right. Yeah. But for Fairfield Union, a big win on the road at Circleville. Christian Thompson had a big night, 11 points, 9 rebounds, nearly a double-double. Macy Martindale had 9. I think Martindale and Thompson have kind of been like the big two for them, but their supporting cast is really solid as well. Taylor Smeck had 7 points. The big difference in the game was at the free throw line.
Mm-hmm. So, 17-4 advantage at the free throw line. Now, attempts wasn't that crazy because I think it was they were 17-22 and Circleville was 4 of 13. And you're going to foul late in games, so ultimately that can make a difference there. But for Circleville, you just got to make your free throws in a time like that where in a game where you want to. It would be an upset because you lost the first game and it's an undefeated team, but you're looking at it as if we're going to pull off this upset, we got to make everything happen the right way, and ultimately not making the free throws can be part of the reason that cost them the game. But ultimately, I think it was, from what I was told, Fairfield Union on the glass and just overall really good defensively gets them the win, 19-0. And I would be shocked if they don't finish the regular season 22-0. They play on Monday, and I'm trying to remember who it was against, but it's a very winnable game. It was I think it was Liberty Union in league play. So they win that. They got Miami Trace on Thursday and then at Chillicothe on Saturday. I think they're likely to finish the season 22-0 after going 9-13 a year ago. So I think we know who the state coach of the year is going to be, and it's going to be over at Fairfield Union. And anytime you have that turnaround, even if you're adding a player that just didn't come back out a year ago, it's an outstanding season for them because clearly.
Well, it's not just one player. Yeah. I mean, obviously Thompson is a big part of it, but I mean, 11 points and 9 rebounds in this game. That's a good game, but 11 points isn't something that's out of this world. A lot of players are capable of scoring 11 points. It's clearly a team effort, and it shows how well, the Falcons are obviously coached. And a big reason why that young team made it to a district final and really played with Fairland a couple of years ago through about 3.5 quarters over at Southeastern.
Yeah, they did a good job in that. They're very competitive in that matchup. Thompson was good in that game, but they had some talented seniors, but Martindale played a big role for them then, but you're seeing it as they get older. really good competitors, winners over there at Fairfield Union. Congratulations to the Falcons on the MSL championship. For Circleville, not an easy week coming up, but we'll get to that in a minute. They dropped to 16-3, 11 or 10-2 in the MSL. An outstanding season for them. Last year they finished 22-0. If you tell me you finished 22-0 and then you're gonna the next year after you graduate a nice senior class, you're still gonna be 16-3 going into the last week, I think Coach Bigham would take it more times than not. Maddie Blakeman led them. Her and Addison Edgington both had 11 in this one. Kaylee West had a nice game, 8.7 rebounds to lead them. A lot of their players are coming back next year as well. I think they're probably the pick in the MSL for next season. I think Logan Elm, it could be a sneaky one as well with a lot of their players back. But for Circleville, they are at Chillicothe on Tuesday, and then they host Unioto on Thursday and at Athens on Saturday. They're the 2 seed in Division 4. And really, they're going to be tournament ready going off of those last 2 games because that's the 2 and 3 seeds in Division 3. So should be a big week for Circleville. I think Edgington's actually a really bad matchup for actually both of them in this coming week because I don't think Athens.
Does Athens have somebody that can guard Edgington?
Right. That's right. And Unioto struggles with size that can score. So should be an interesting week for Circleville. I wouldn't be surprised. If they're another one. You mentioned a team of the week for if Fairland wins out this week. I think Circleville is another one that is probably the team of the week if they win out this week. So should be an interesting week for the Tigers coming up. So we didn't really do a team of the week this week on the girls' side. I think Minford, going 4-0 on the week maybe would normally. Didn't want to throw it out the same group, but we've seen some really talented teams throughout the year. And we just kind of went away from it this week. But next week, we will do a full tournament preview. So we'll get kind of locked into that in that way as well. So kind of going to the previews. Shortest preview of all time. Watch last week's episode if you want the full White Oak and Fayetteville preview. That game will be on Wednesday. It was postponed. I'll take it. Me and Raymond are going to be down there on Wednesday in Fayetteville. Be my first ever trip to see the Rocket.
The launch pad.
Yeah, the launch pad. Seeing the launch pad over there. White Oak's going to go into that game 12-4, 10-2 in the Shack 2. A must-win for them after they lost to North Adams this past week. Fayetteville 15-3, 10-1 in the Shack 2. So that's a big one. Once again, watch last week's episode for a full preview of that one. Big one on Thursday. Unioto at Circleville. Unioto coming into that game 15-4, most likely 16-4 because they play at Westfall tonight. They go to Pickaway County back-to-back, or not back-to-back days, 2 out of 3 days. Miley Smith. 25.9. Well, actually, they play Paint Valley at home on Wednesday as well. So, Miley Smith coming to the game. University of Dayton commit.
Yep.
She committed.
I guess that could have been one of our one of our headlines. We might do that next week.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. We did a headline with her, scored 1,000. So, and I'm sure we'll have lots more headlines of her throughout. Yeah. But yeah, committed to the University of Dayton. Pretty awesome to be able to do. And I think it was Londonderry Lenz did the video. It's a pretty good video as well. So. She averages 25.9 points a game, most likely going to be the SVC Player of the Year for a second straight year. 7.8 points, or 7.8 rebounds a game, 3.1 steals a game. Maya Hamilton had a really big week last week as well, 17.9 points a game this year, 46 made threes. Central Connecticut State commit, another Division I player for the Shermans. Kiera Beard had a really nice game against Southeastern on Saturday. She was 6 of 8 from 3. She averages 8.9 points a game, only a freshman, having a really nice year. Magnolia Holbert, 7.7 points a game, a junior, leads them in assists as well. So for Unioto, not a ton of depth, but their top 4 have been outstanding all season. As we mentioned, the length and size that Edgington provides for Circleville could give them a big issue in this one. Edgington, only a junior or a sophomore, 16.6 points, 8.8 rebounds a game for Coach Bigham and the Tigers. Maddie Blakeman, a junior, 11.8 points a game, 5.5 rebounds, just a hair under 4 steals a game as well. Kaylee West, Allie Thornsley, some other players that fill out the stat sheet for them. Brooklyn Kramer is a name that we talked about a little bit earlier in the season. She hasn't played recently. Don't know if she's available for this game. If she is, just a hair under 9 points and 4 steals a game. So she can do a lot if she's available. Only 13 games played there, so I'm not sure on the availability of that. So that would be a nice player to have come back for the tournament if you're Coach Bigham. But this one's a big one over in Roundtown at the Globe Fiber Gymnasium. Should be a big one. I think Derek's going to be at that one.
I mean, it's one of the, because obviously I think all of us live in Ross County.
Yeah.
So it's one of the, and obviously this one's in Pickaway County, but it's just outside of it, right? Circleville's an easy trip. So it's one of the few opportunities where you get to see a game between like two like top 4 teams in any given division that's like within 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? We don't have to drive all the way to the Ohio River.
Right. Yeah. Usually for our big games, we got to go down south. But yeah, as you mentioned, they're both the 2 seeds. Unioto is the 2 seed in Division 3. Circleville the 2 seed in Division 4. Both will have big postseason aspirations ahead of them. So this is a good tune-up game for both of them going into the tournament. I think it's the last one for Unioto. I think it's their final one before the tournament starts. For Circleville, they have that big one at Athens on Saturday. So then our final preview of the week is on Saturday. Adina at Hillsboro. Adina 13-6, 8-4 in the SVC. Marley Halcomb, a sophomore, averages 16.8 points a game. Really good sophomores in this one with Tylee Davis on the side of the Indians. She also 5.6 rebounds a game for Marley Halcomb, leads them. Really good 3-point shooter, can score all around, and really dynamic. For Adina, who they don't do the most dynamic stuff offensively. They're going to run their stuff. They're going to get the shots they want. But Halcomb's the one player that can really do it in the one-on-one situation for them. Corinne Day's had a really nice senior year, averages 9 points, 5 rebounds a game, has expanded her game to the 3-point line as well. She's been dynamic for them. JC Smith leads the SVC with 5.9 assists a game. She's only a junior. In the stream we had of Adina at Huntington, she got things going early, scoring. And if she can get going scoring, that makes them really dangerous. Cameron Sowers gives them good minutes as well. The Farrell twins as well give them some depth. JC Jones has seen a little bit of playing time as well throughout the season, but mostly they go 6 deep, but they played really well. Winners of 5 of their last 6. They had a big win over Amanda Clear Creek last week as well. It was a 2-point game. They played Unioto pretty tight over in Frankfort. And, they do play Southeastern on Wednesday. That should be a win for them. They also play on Monday night, which I didn't have that on the schedule because, once again, the show goes out on Tuesday. So big one for Adina to finish the season out. They played a ton of tight games as well, so they were pretty experienced late in games. For Hillsboro, they are 16-3, came up just a little bit short in the FAC, 8-2 there. Tylee Davis, 15.5 points a game, 12.1 rebounds a game. We mentioned the sophomore has got to be one of the favorites for FAC Player of the Year. Maybe he doesn't get it this year because the prior, we could see a tie for it. It wouldn't surprise me if they did a co-player of the year there.
Yeah.
But for at least the next 2 years, she could be a district player of the year as well this year. Just been outstanding all year for them. Kyra Boyd, a junior, 13.1 points a game. Kobe Miles, another junior, 10.1 points a game. Peyton Bledsoe, they're really the lone senior, 9.1 points a game. And then Ella Jordan, she had their big game against McClain with 9 and 8. She averages 7.3 points a game. We mentioned not an easy week for them as they've also got White Oak. They go on the road to White Oak on Thursday. So big week for Hillsboro overall. This one, I think, is going to be a very good game. We're going to pick it. So it's going to be something we'll talk about a little bit more in our quick picks. But overall, this one is a game to watch in our area as well.
All right, ready to do some quick picks?
Yes.
For the girls' side, so we've got about a minute again. The games we're going to be picking this week: Piketon at Westfall, Unioto at Circleville. We're going to pick White Oak and Fayetteville Perry again because we were supposed to pick it last week, and we did pick it, but it got postponed. And then we'll do Waterford at Belpre and Adena at Hillsboro. So,
yeah, it should be fun picks to make. Once again, I am awful at this.
You started off so good.
I know.
You went like 9-1 the first week, and you had like a 2 or 3 game lead. You just had. It was a couple of weeks
Once
ago.
again, I kept picking against Fairfield Union.
That didn't.
I'm like 0-4 in that, where their teams against them are 0-19.
There we go. I was sitting here trying to update the graphics for the quick fix, and I was struggling with it. All right, so we got 5 games we're going to do, about 2 seconds, and game 1 going to be Piketon and Westfall. Piketon's been pretty good in league play this year. I think they lost both games to Huntington. Or no, who was it? Did they lose to Huntington twice, but also beat Adena twice? Obviously, they've struggled a little bit with Unioto, as most teams in the conference do. I think Westfall's on the come up. I think them and Zane Trace have surprised some people this season with kind of how they've competed with some of the teams we projected to be at the top of the conference. Ultimately, I'm going to go with Piketon. I think they're one of the top and upcoming teams in the Southeast District.
Yeah, I think this is a game to watch for this year and also next year because Adrian Moe and Mackenzie Cook have been really, really good this year for Westfall. But ultimately, I'm going to take Kelly and Forbes and Piketon to win this game on the road at the Dome. I do think this has the capability of being a really, really tight game.
All right, game 2, Unioto at Circleville. Circleville obviously been really dominant this year once again. They had an undefeated regular season last year before falling in the district tournament. I believe to Sheridan is who they ended up losing to. Unioto has been kind of the same way. They've really challenged themselves outside of the conference. Really, for Circleville, the only struggles in the conference have been with Fairfield Union, as they've accounted for 2 of their 3 losses on the season. I think I'm going to go with Unioto in this one. I just think maybe they're a little bit better at the top. I think Edgington will kind of be an interesting factor. I'm not sure Unioto has somebody that directly can match up with her. So I think she could have a really good game, but I think the Shermans are probably going to get this one.
It seems like Unioto, they can speed you up in the full court, and I think Circleville has the players to deal with that. But at the same time, I think Unioto's played a really nice zone as of late, and that can help them with Edgington and maybe take a little bit of pressure off in a one-on-one situation with an interior defending. I think ultimately Unioto probably has the best and maybe best 2 players on the court in Smith and Hamilton. So because of that, I'm going to take the Shermans.
All right, game 3, we've got White Oak at Fayetteville Perry. We picked this game last week, so I'm just going to keep it pretty brief. I went with Fayetteville Perry last week, and I'm going to stick with that pick. So White Oak did beat Fayetteville Perry the first time around.
Yes, they did.
This one that was at White Oak, and this one is at home. So I'm going to roll with the Rockets coming off the launch pad.
Yeah, gosh, you're better at that part than me. But I think, the Hawks, Ham, Roberts, Lucas, White Oak is going to come into this game ready to go. They want to try to win the league, and they need to win this game at Fayetteville to do so. But I think ultimately Riley Kleemeyer, Aubrey Barker, Christina Murphy are going to be too much. And I'm also going to take Fayetteville in what could be a preview of the next couple of years, Shack 2 championship game.
Switched your pick. You picked White Oak last week. All right, game 4, Waterford at Belpre. This is right on the outskirts of our coverage area. I haven't done a whole lot of research in girls basketball in the TVC hockey. I know both of these teams are fairly solid coming out of that conference. Waterford got them the first time around. This one's on the road at Belpre. I think Carson's going to be at this game, so it's either on Friday or Saturday, I think. But Waterford, I think, is the top team in Division 7 right now, so I'm going to roll with the Wildcats in this one.
Yeah, it was a 7-point game the first time around, and that was, on the road at Waterford. So, but at the same time, Belpre has not been playing as well. They dropped a massive loss at Fed Hawk. It just seems like they're not playing as well as they were early in the season. Because of that, I'm going to also take Waterford. They're number 1 in the state and in Division 7 or in our area in Division 7 for a reason. Because of that, give me Waterford. I do think this has a chance to be a sneaky Sneaper game.
A sneaper. There you go. All right. Game 5. We've got about a minute to go. Adina at Hillsboro. This is a pretty easy game to kind of make some comparisons with, as Adina had a close one on the road at McClain. So they have 2 really tough road dates this season with the 2 top teams out of the FAC. I'm going to roll with Hillsboro in this one. I keep picking Hillsboro because it just seems from top to bottom they're the most filled out roster. I think this is the case here once again. I'm going to go with the Indians to pick up a big win this week.
You mentioned that the depth of the Hillsboro's ability to score, because I think they have either 6 or 7 players that average over 4 points a game, 5 that average over 7, 3 that average in double figures. I think because of that, you have to look at Hillsboro really deep. But I do think Adina will be able to handle their pressure and rebound with them. Give me Marley Halcomb on the road with a big shot late, and Adina to go to the tournament at 16-6.
All right, there we go. Right before, once again, we probably cut that pretty close, but all right, there we go.
Yeah,
another round of quick picks.
I had to pick something different on that side.
Yeah, we were 4 for 4 on picking the same. I figured you'd stick with White Oak because you got to make up some games.
I know, but like the more I thought about it, the more I went with Fayetteville. I couldn't remember who I picked last week. That's the worst part.
You went with White Oak.
I wanted White Oak last week because they're the hot hand. You just beat them, and then you get a matchup again with them. But even with
there's been some time in between those games now.
But,
so
yeah. But they did lose to North Adams, so that was kind of where I was thinking on that. But man, I think we've got another fun week ahead. Once again, we're going to do a full bracket breakdown kind of thing next week. For the girls, the boys will be the week after, because as we said, there's not a lot you can really preview, especially with we'll say in more than likely on the girls' side. Well, I'll just jump to Division 3. More than likely, Athens is going to beat Chillicothe in the 3-6 game. But let's say Chillicothe wins. Then if we do a full preview of Athens at Unioto, it's just a waste of time. So we can't really do a full preview until we know what the district semis are going to be, which we will know after next week. So I think Saturday's the big day for district quarterfinals, and then they'll go to kind of a set. I think some of them are at the Waverly downtown gym. I think there's a couple that are at Southeastern. So they'll go to different locations as opposed to the home sites after the district quarterfinals. So once we know that for the district semis, then we'll know, and then we'll be able to say where we're going to be streaming wise, because we'll have at least the district level of the girls. I think it could be different this year because there's so many regionals. So there's a slight possibility we could do regionals, but we'll have to see.
We'll see. Hopefully. We'll see. The last couple of years, obviously, our coverage has been cut short after the districts, which, usually we get a lot of good district finals around here. And I think, Division 4, I think is, me personally, I think Division 4 might be the most interesting division on the girls' side. Division 3, there's just not a lot of teams. Division 5, I think that
it's so top heavy.
I think that Minford bracket could be interesting just because, Minford's a good team, but I don't think Minford is so far and away better than everybody as Portsmouth and Fairland seem to be. But I still think Minford, those top 3 seeds, I think are all going to win district titles.
I will say, as an SVC guy, I don't like the numbers. It's just because in Portsmouth's in Division 5, the winner of Piketon Westfall, which of course is a first round game as well, we'll play Portsmouth at the downtown arena. Huntington, St. Trace play, and then Alexander and Southeastern play.
Yep.
So
Alexander had a big win over Athens.
Yeah.
Last week or a couple weeks ago, I think.
There's the possibility of
Unioto.
all but 2 of the SVC schools being knocked out in that same bracket.
Yep.
And it's very likely because how good that Portsmouth team is. But I will say, I think the Fairland, and I know Adina's the 8, North Adams is the 5, so it would be kind of an upset there if Adina would win. But I think Adina's probably the better team in that situation. I think Adina, Fairland, Fairland's probably a pretty heavy favorite. I think has a chance to be kind of a sleeper pick because of what Halcombe can do, and I think they're really well coached as well. So I think they can do what they can to try to slow down Fairland. I think that's got a chance to be kind of a sleeper. But yeah, Minford, Wheelersburg, even River Valley, even though River Valley would be coming out of the 9, but they've had a nice season. We'll see about how Minford and Wheelersburg match up tonight or on Monday for their second one, because that looks like it could be a third one for a district title at the downtown gym on the 22nd. So,
all right, we got a game to go do. You ready to get out of here?
Let's go.
Obviously, you won't see this until the game is over. I'm guessing it'll be a pretty solid game, even though it was 18 points the first time around. Which, last year Portsmouth won the first meeting and Fairland won the second. So
right.
We'll see if that follows suit this season, or if Portsmouth completes the series sweep, which I believe would be the first time. I think last year was their first win over Fairland since joining the FAC. Yes. So it would obviously, I think, since joining the OVC. I think this would be Portsmouth's first ever outright OVC girls basketball title, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. I don't know that to be for sure, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. So should be a good one to go rewatch once this episode comes out, as obviously it'll come out. It's being recorded before the game, but it'll come out after the game. So.
And I'll say this, no matter what the score ends up being, like, I would take a look because of the talent that's going to be on the floor, because
right.
Barnitz is going to go play for Fairland. I would think Russell and Godby would have a chance to play if they want. Talaferro probably could play. Like, these are all very talented players. And then you jump over to Portsmouth, who is just absolutely loaded, because you've got Daisha Reed that's going on and playing for sure. It's they're loaded. So this is high end talent. There's a wild chance that it could be a preview of a state semifinal game as well. It'd be cool. Is because it's so spread out. If we could get a state semifinal, I don't think we will. But
you think we're going to get to broadcast a state semifinal?
No,
that'd be wild.
I'm just saying, maybe we could, or maybe we could have someone call it on one person on a telephone because they paid money.
Yeah,
we'll see. I'm sure me saying that will really help us.
Yeah,
get a game.
I don't think too many people watch this deep into the episode, but
I wouldn't.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. All right, unless you got anything else, that'll wrap it up. Nope. We're at Fairland at Portsmouth girls Monday, and then Oak Hill at Northwest boys on Friday. Only a 2-game week for us, which is like really the norm for us. But right. Things are going to kick up pretty quick, as we've got a lot of tournament basketball coming up here in the Southeast District. So that'll wrap it up for this week's episode of SOSA Overtime, presented by Perfection One.